had the good fortune, the blessing, in April, the 26th of April, 1952, of coming to this exact geographic location with my mother and father, and being born here. There used to be a hospital here, People's Hospital. And if we took the GPS coordinates, I think my dad's right, it's about 50 feet from here was the room where my mom gave birth. It was higher, it was on the second floor, so it was probably in the ceiling area over top of the children's books. And that seems real appropriate to me. I'm reminded today that the late great psychologist Alfred Adler described in his writing how important the first 9 years of life are. That in the first 9 years, we develop what he calls their core beliefs. It's sort of a blueprint from which we learn to deal with life. We learn things about ourselves and the world and relationships and how to exist. And I remember one such lesson, a principle, a core belief I learned in my household. I think I was in kindergarten and I had made a new friend in this new schools experience I was having. And some of my older friends were not real happy with me over this. And I didn't quite understand why, but they apparently thought that this little boy was odd and wasn't quite like the rest of us. And they wanted me to choose to be friends with him or to be friends with them. And I went to my mother and I said, "What do I do?" She said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, what's the right thing?" I said, "Well, you have to decide that." I said, "Well, how do I know what the right thing is?" She said, "Well, usually the right thing is that which is most difficult." And I learned at an early age that doing the right thing by people is very important, regardless of the costs. And that reminds me of another story where that lesson came up a little later in my life. I'd been spending most of my life as a construction worker, and I loved it. Building things, laying block, pouring concrete, standing back at the end of the day and seeing what I had accomplished. It's a marvelous thing, especially when done as a team or as a crew. But something else was calling me, and I tried to explain it to my parents that there's something I have to go do, and I'm not sure what it is or why, but it seems important. So I went to college, at junior college, and then I transferred to Arizona State University. And I was convinced that what I wanted to be was a organizational psychologist. That I wanted to wear nice sports jackets and clean clothes, make big bucks, and solve problems for corporations. But I didn't have any counseling experience. And through a series of interesting coincidences, I ended up volunteering for an organization in Phoenix because I thought, well, if I could do some kind of counseling with that organization, I could probably do counseling anywhere. And I wrote a little something about how that all came about. In 1981, something touched my soul and changed my life forever. I was 29 years old, starting the master's program at Arizona State University. Based on my research and statistics background, I landed a 4-hour-a-week data analyst position in my first non-construction job. It was at the Center Against Sexual Assault in Phoenix, the largest nonprofit sexual abuse treatment program in the United States. A veteran therapist there asked me if I'd like to help her with the children's play therapy group. I was a full-time student in the master's program, and I would eventually work at the center full-time at all times of the day and night. Most of the children at that time were preschool or kindergarten to 2nd grade. There were 2 sisters there, ages 3.5 and 6. They had foster parents because both mother and father were in prison for their abuse of the children. Both girls were being treated for gonorrhea. The littlest girl was nonverbal and had not spoken a word since she was put into foster care. The foster parents were very involved in the children's therapy and formed a good, functional family. Over 4 or 5 weeks, I used some of what I'd learned in early childhood development with Dr. Kathy Ritchie. The little girl joined in, singing with the other children, and gradually trusted and opened up to her foster parents and teachers. The thing that drove the lesson home for me was a chance meeting in a downtown street fair on Mill Avenue. On a crowded sidewalk on a Saturday morning, I heard a little voice calling me from behind somewhere. I stopped and turned around. The crowd parted, and the little girl came running up the sidewalk, calling out enthusiastically, "Mr. Jeff, Mr. Jeff, Mr. Jeff." Her foster parents and sisters were walking with her hand in hand behind her. Her foster parents and sister were walking hand in hand behind her and smiling at having surprised her. I knelt down and greeted her and her family. And while I kneeled, they stood. We talked for a while, and then I watched them walk away together, waving while they looked back. My life changed that day. Something happened that I would call spiritual or religious, an epiphany. I was a construction worker with a bachelor's degree. That last job I had as a carpenter and job foreman. I found out that I was good at something profoundly precious, something I did not know I could do. I was suddenly aware that if there is a God, then something godly had happened. I helped change that child's life, change her mind, her spirit, her family, her future marriage, her children, and her grandchildren. I was a part of something I had no words for. I was the right guy at the right place at the right time to be a part of a child's healing from the most horrific abuses children suffer in this world. No other job could be more important than saving children, innocent, completely sin-free, deserved nothing that was done to them, and suffering on all levels, possibly mentally, physically impaired for the rest of their life. They suffer for the sins of others. Nothing could be more obvious. Someone called childhood sexual abuse evil. They would get no argument from me. It is a spiritual battle for a deeply wounded life. It is a spiritual warfare. It is like fighting cancer in that sometimes people die and sometimes it takes a lifetime to deal with. Sometimes it goes into remission in the way cancer does and then returns for a late-in-life challenge. It is a dangerous business. There are people who are predatory towards children, and there are people who came to want me dead. There was even one satanic cult that was plotting against my wife and myself. I helped send pedophiles and rapists to prison and faced a few murderers. I've seen women and men come back from incredible odds, and my best friend's daughter who could not live with her abuses. It has all been beautiful and ugly and important. But I discovered when people come together in a prayerful cause, something greater than themselves, I've seen 1 + 1 sometimes equal 50 or 1,000. I believe this work that my late wife and I devoted our lives to is a calling. It is a holy mission, and it continues. I met that little girl 30 years ago. I have worked all this time to know all I can know, write all I have learned, and save all of the girls and boys I can possibly reach, to do right by them, to help ease the suffering, and inspire them to live a fulfilling life. It wasn't long after that I became a full-time counselor at that organization. And over the years, met the woman who would become my wife. And we began writing the book Without Consent in the 80s. And at that time, there was nothing on the planet that an average citizen could walk into the library and find that would explain the experience of childhood sexual abuse and what the pitfalls are and what a person can do to help themselves. Nothing. And when we finished it, we were neck and neck with another couple of authors who published a book. But we were the first husband and wife therapy team to write such a book. And the most extraordinary news is that it's available now all over the world. You can walk into a library or a school system, log into the computer, and you can find this for 99 cents as an ebook, or some places as low as a penny as a used copy. And any girl or boy or father or boyfriend can find information that will be of help to him or her and their family. The world has indeed changed in the last 23 years. And it's good news. This book I'm especially proud of what Carol and I accomplished in that it received immense professional praise from such organizations as the Child Abuse and Neglect, the International Journal, the American Association of Counseling and Development, Southern California Clergy Report, Pastoral Life, Psychotherapy Book Club, and SICUS, the Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States. The principles of this book are as valid today as they were 2 decades ago. It's a wonderful accomplishment. And it inspired me to go off on my own. While taking care of my wife in her last few years of her life, I began writing a series, what I call the Dreamer Series. It's a thinly disguised fictional story. The aliens I've not really experienced, I made that part up. But much of the rest of it is true. The names have been changed. The places have been changed to protect the innocent and to avoid the guilty. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book, and before it was published, I had the opportunity to read it to my wife. Over a period of a couple weeks, I read 1 chapter a night, and it was a marvelous experience. And I got the highest praise from her. I wasn't sure if she was going to, how she was going to like it. Pretty smart cookie when it comes to reading, and had introduced me to a lot of great books. But she looked at me and she said, "Jeffrey, the thing I like about your writing is that no matter what the story, she says, there's something in it that's a kind of holy beacon. And if that's true, and I've accomplished some of that, then I'm indeed proud of what I've accomplished with Indians and Aliens." It's a series. It's the first in a series of 4. And I'm about 85% complete with the sequel to this book. And the working title for it is Grace and the Raconteur, Extreme Love Stories. I have a marvelous first review that shares you. I remember when I was a kid reading the Waterloo Courier, Dear Abby. I remember that. And Dear Abby had written an article that day about how can you measure the success of your life. And one of the measurements of success in one's life was if you earn the respect of intelligent people. I remember that. I hung on to that. And one of the most intelligent people I've known in my life, known him for 37 years, a fellow I met when he was doing my income taxes back in the 70s. He's a voracious appetite for learning. And he went from being a bookkeeper to earning his CPA. And after he'd done that, him and his wife went to college and both got their law degrees. And after he settled in with that for a while, he did some judge work and some legal work. He decided to get his PhD when he did that. And a couple of weeks ago, he won the World Championship in Blitz chess for people over the age of 70. He beat the reigning champion in a 5-minute chess match. And here's what he said about Indians and Aliens. After being touched with the deep love the author had for his wife, as displayed in Indians and Aliens, I was struck by the author's knowledge and respect for Indian culture. As a card-carrying and enrolled member of an Indian tribe, he's chalked up. It made me feel proud of my culture reading the author's words and lyrics of the author's songs. This is a must-read for those who have suffered in life and survived to live another day. It is also about how we can help each other in this journey of life. Finally, it feels good to use my Indian name after reading this enlightening book. Tommy Henry Ebar, Anticat, Doctor of Justice and PhD. It means a lot to me. The man has been an inspiration on many levels. I know we want to have a few questions, so I'll see if I can finish up my little talk here by sharing with you the introduction to the next book, the book that will follow Indians and Aliens. I am an old man, a grandfather, an elder of a small clan, a dreamer, a singer, and a storyteller. I have at times in my life been a spiritual warrior, a fearless man of bold and decisive actions. I've read some of the great minds of written civilization. I have also learned sacred rituals and songs that are written nowhere, but orally passed through indigenous centuries. I have broken bread with poor people, rich people, pushers, pretenders, prostitutes, and profiteers. I've listened to the stories of madmen, medicine men, lost men, and saved men. I've held the hands of women of virtue, women of vices, victims of torture and terrorism. I have sung songs with children of privilege, children of poverty, children of neglect, and children conceived in rape. I've known a wide variety of personalities, intellects, faiths, and races. I've studied with doctors, dilettantes, disciples, and deceivers. I've learned from caregivers, cowboys, crime fighters, and convicts. I've swapped tales with hellraisers, heroes, heretics, and holy men. I've prayed with preachers, priests, pagans, and pilgrims. I've been reviled, cursed, accused, threatened with slow death, and threatened with being blown away. I've been loved, let go, defeated, inspired, and I have been sometimes led by a vision greater than myself, greater than my wants or needs, or my safety. And so it was long ago when I dreamed I met a woman. She was carrying a heavy cross through the narrow streets of an ancient village, a child in tow. I interrupted my journey to share her burden. We walked, we talked, we listened, we learned, we prayed, we loved, we became a family. As mother, father, and daughter, we grew old and frail and disabled, and we prepared for death together. Call the woman Grace, call the child Emily, call the man what you will. Thank you for being here. And I want to tell you, from all my red relatives in Arizona, I want to say, on behalf of Fawn and Red Horse, and my late wife, sister to the White Buffalo, Itakwiyase. From my Buddhist friend in Arizona, lovely person I call Sweet Medicine, I want to tell you, Namaste. My soul respects your soul. On behalf of my family here, relatives, and neighbors who I grew up around, I want to just say, Lord God, thank you. Amen. Questions?
Thank you.
Been a long time. I'm sure there are other people here that I might not recognize right off the bat.
Mary, friends.
Mary, good to see you.
It's been a while. Well done.
Thank you. Let's see who has the next time slot. I believe Gary's up.